Blessings everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Cassandra and you are watching Spotless Mind Tarot. This video that you are watching is meant to serve as an introduction to my new series called Tarot Reflections. In this series, I will be diving deep into the meaning, symbolism, and correspondences of each of the tarot cards from my personal point of view, while incorporating the Kabbalah, Hermetic, and Gnostic teachings of the tarot. These teachings are closely related, if not exact, to the teachings of the Golden Dawn. But more importantly, the main focus will be on the connection of the tarot cards with the Kabbalah Tree of Life. Before I do that, I thought it was important to introduce this series by covering the origins and history of the tarot. What is Qabbalah? How did Qabbalah and tarot come together to be what is known as Qabalah Tarot? How to practice Qabalah Tarot, as well as my background and experience with using tarot cards. Since this video is meant to be an introduction to my series, I am only briefly covering these topics. I will discuss these topics from my own understanding and point of view, so I do recommend that you learn more than what is being presented to you in this video. I have left some links in the description covering the topics I will be discussing in this video. To help distinguish between the two forms of Qabbalah, I will pronounce Qabbalah written with a K in the way that the rabbis pronounce it, that's Qabbalah, and I will pronounce Kabbalah written with a Q, which is correlated to the esoteric and tarot card practice of Qabbalah, and the more, I guess you could say, incorrect pronunciation, and that would be Qabbalah. Also, it's inevitable that I will pronounce certain words and names incorrectly, especially foreign words and names. I will do my best to pronounce them in their correct form, so please excuse my lack of correct pronunciation. If you haven't yet already, please subscribe to my channel, tap the notifications bell, and like this video. If this video is informative and useful for you, please let me know by leaving a comment below. And if there are any other topics you would like for me to cover that's related to tarot, astrology, Kabbalah, or esotericism, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments as well. If there's someone you know that would appreciate this video, then please share it with them. Alright, so let's get started. The origins and history of tarot is somewhat confusing and a bit conflicting between scholars. That may only be because tarot was influenced by many different groups of people and cultures, and they didn't originate from one place or time. The first known tarot cards were used as playing cards, and the divinatory aspects of tarot didn't appear until much later. A popular theory is that tarot first got its roots in ancient Egypt and was heavily inspired by the Book of Thought. This theory is widely accepted within the tarot community, although there's no solid evidence to suggest the Egyptians in the ancient times ever created a tarot deck. As the story goes, it was prophesied that Egypt would come to ruin and no longer be the powerful nation that it once was. So in order to preserve the history and knowledge of the Egyptians, the tarot cards were created, and it's within the cards that they hid the secrets and knowledge of the Book of Thought. However, the true origins of tarot cards may have come from the Arabic Naib playing cards. These cards were created when the Mamluk were in control of Egypt from the mid-1200s to early 1500s. It is theorized that these cards may have their influences from playing cards that existed in China and India during the 1200s. The Naib consisted of 47 cards divided into 4 suits. These cards made their way into France and Spain and became established in Western European countries by the late 1300s. During the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century, tarot cards began appearing in documented history through their publications between the 1430s and 1450s. These cards were called triomphe cards, meaning trump cards, and were used for everyday playing cards. These cards featured allegorical content related to those of tarocchi games. The oldest tarot cards to survive from this time are known as the Visconti Sforza Tarot, used collectively to refer to the incomplete sets of approximately 15 decks, including the oldest known tarot deck, the Pierpont Morgan Bergamo. The Pierpont Morgan Bergamo tarot deck was produced around 1451 and originally consisted of 78 cards, but unfortunately there are only 74 remaining. The Knights Templar had some major influences over the tarot as well. The Templar designed their own sets of tarot cards and collected other tarot cards from foreign places, likely through their crusades. There were many tarot decks designed specifically for royal families. The Gringonor Tarot was a set of cards believed to have been designed for King Charles VI of France. It was recorded in account records that King Charles made a payment dated in 1392 to artist Joachim Gringonor for 3 decks of painted and gilded playing cards. This deck was created by Marco Benedetti and is now known as the Golden Tarot of the Renaissance. The Solobusca Tarot, published in 1491, is the earliest known complete 78-card tarot deck featuring full illustrations for the suit cards and the classic iconography of tarot trump cards. This deck includes 21 trump cards plus the full and 56 suit cards. There have been decks previous to this one that were also designed in this fashion. However, this is the only complete deck remaining from this time. Until the release of the Rider-Waite Tarot, the Solobusca was the only tarot card deck featuring scenes of life imagery. It's also arguably one which features images and scenes of European alchemy practiced during the Renaissance. This could suggest that these cards may have been used for divinatory use, but to my knowledge, there's no evidence for this claim. It wasn't until the 1880s where we find the most development of modern-day tarot. In 1909, the most well-known and widely used tarot deck, the Rider-Waite Tarot, was published. This deck was created by Arthur Edward Waite and illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith. Today, most people like to call it the Waite-Smith deck or Rider-Waite-Smith, as the Rider Company was the publisher and likely had no involvement in the creation of the deck. This deck closely resembles the Solobusca Tarot and where most, if not all, of the inspiration behind the illustration of these cards come from. In 1944, the Thought Tarot was published. This tarot deck was created by Aleister Crowley and designed by Lady Frieda Harris. Both Crowley and Waite believe that prior to the 14th century, tarot did not exist at all, and the history of tarot originating anywhere in the world before then is false information. So that makes things even more conflicting, since they are the modern-day fathers of tarot. I mean, we wouldn't perform tarot readings the way we do if it weren't for them. So for them to say its existence came about sometime in the 14th century and not any time sooner speaks volumes, whether or not these claims are true. Regardless of the true origins of the tarot cards, it's evident that tarot was a type of community project which undertook influences from many different sources and card usage over a few thousand years. And the esoteric or spiritual symbolism, archetypes, and metaphysical aspects of the cards have likely always been there, whether or not the cards were used for divinatory means. I think what's important to take away from all of this is that tarot doesn't belong to one ethnic group, social region, spiritual, religious, or esoteric beliefs, nor is it subscribed to any one system of practice. Today, there are thousands of tarot decks. Anyone can make their own and even have them published. Each tarot deck features their own unique style, symbolism, and way of reading the cards, but they generally do follow the same basic principles. Unironically, as a tarot reader and artist myself, I'm illustrating a tarot deck using acrylic paint. This tarot deck is inspired by my love for the tarot and chickens. Yes, chickens. If you're interested in seeing what I've created so far, I've put a link in the description below next to the title, The Rooster Tarot. So this is just a brief history of tarot. I highly recommend that you go and do more research and dive a lot deeper into the subject because there's a lot to uncover and a lot to unfold here. If you would like to learn more about the history of tarot, I've added a few links below in the description that will help you. Kabbalah's origins can be traced back to a form of early Jewish mysticism called Merkava, meaning chariot. Merkava dates back around to the destruction of the Second Temple and maybe even earlier to the prophet Ezekiel. Kabbalah really began to take form in the 12th and 13th century with influences from the Sefer Yetzirah and the Sefer HaBahir. Today, Kabbalah is derived mostly from Lurianic Kabbalah as well as receiving its influences from the Zohar. Kabbalah is largely practiced by Hasidic Jews, while many occult and esoteric groups and concepts incorporate Kabbalah into their practice and philosophy. Oftentimes, when a Kabbalist explains what Kabbalah is, they'll simply tell you that it's a science or theosophy. Hardly if ever will a Kabbalist say it's a religion. Kabbalah means something received or tradition. There are many forms of Kabbalah, all encompassing the same idea. All of these forms are surrounded by the concept and belief that the first thing God created were the Hebrew letters, and that the Hebrew alphabet is a synchronistic allegory system. This system places an emphasis on the sounds and numbers associated to each letter. The designs of the letters and the way in which they are written are also seen as symbolic and hold meaning. Essentially, the Hebrew letters are the root and source of all creation, and that's a pretty big deal. There's a more mystical side of Kabbalah, which incorporates meditation and visualization with the aim to induce visions and prophecy. Then there's a more grounded and practical side, which utilizes Kabbalah as our connection of the physical to the spiritual through ritualistic, oftentimes daily, practice. You don't have to be an initiate into the occult or be a part of the Jewish community and faith to learn and practice Kabbalah, nor do you only have to be a man. Kabbalah has been made widely available to the public more than ever before, especially in our age of the internet, so it's no longer an underground or secret practice. Resources on Kabbalah are posted practically for free to the web. You can also take online classes if they are not readily available to you in your local area, or just watch a handful of videos like this one on YouTube. Of course, there are plenty of books on the subject as well. Although, to be considered a true Kabbalist, you'll need to follow the rules, regulations, and lifestyles of Kabbalah and most, if not all, of Judaism. If you would like to learn more about Jewish mysticism and what Kabbalah is, I've added a link below in the description titled, "What is Jewish Mysticism?" I highly recommend watching that video as they explain perfectly about the different forms of Kabbalah and its origins. The Tree of Life is considered to be a map of the physical world and of the spiritual world. It illustrates how to elevate our consciousness to reach the divine and how one could receive higher consciousness or enlightenment. The Tree of Life consists of 32 paths, the 10 Sephirot, and the 22 paths that connect them. The Sephirot are the most recognizable aspects of the tree and generally the easiest to learn and remember. They are considered to be the vessels of divine light, the emanations of His creation. The paths from one Sephirah to the next define the stages of personal growth and development. For example, the Fool corresponds to path 11, which connects Keter to Chokmah. This is the path one must take after receiving the divine light or divine spark, if they wish to fulfill the goal or objective that was given to them. Working with the paths is called path working. The tarot is a fantastic tool that could assist you in your path working. They serve as visual guides representing the energies and archetypes of the paths or sephira that they correspond to. The Tree of Life can be viewed as one giant bridge between us and the divine, with many smaller bridges we must cross in order to get there. We work with the tree from the bottom to top in order to elevate our consciousness. Working from the top of the tree to the bottom is the path of the divine spark. The divine spark is received through the first emanation on the tree, Keter. This divine spark comes from the space of the Ein Sof. The Ein Sof, and Ein Sof or the three veils representing the outer limits of existence and impulses of creation. The Ein Sof is the outer bounds of our reality. In Kabbalah, there are what's called the 4 worlds. Each world represents one of the 4 different soul groups, soul stages, and aspect of all life and creation. These worlds have been assigned to one of the 4 Hebrew letters of the Tetragrammaton, or the divine name, Yahweh, Yod, He, Vav, and He. There's Atzilut, the world of emanation, assigned to Yod, Beriah, the world of creation, assigned to He, Yetzirah, the world of formation, assigned to Vav, and Asaya, the world of action, assigned to He. The Tree of Life on its own features the 4 worlds within itself, but you could also take a tree from each world and stack them one on top of the other, with the lowest world, Asaya, on the bottom, and the highest world, Atzilut, on the top. This arrangement was given the nickname Jacob's Ladder, which could be viewed as the soul's process of ascension. In Qabalah Tarot, the 4 worlds feature their own unique color scale. This is a system which was developed by the Golden Dawn. Each of the 4 worlds are represented by one of the 4 suits of the tarot, along with the suit's element, and by one of the 4 court cards. The colors in each world reflect the different energies and vibrations. Each suit corresponds to its stage of creation, and each court card corresponds to a particular soul group. Atzilut is assigned to the king scale, which is represented by the wands, kings, and the element of fire. The colors of the king scale is derived from the natural essence of color. This is a region of pure light and the source of all color and music. Beriah is assigned to the queen scale, and it is represented by the cups, queens, and the element of water. The colors of the queen scale are colors we perceive from reflected light. These are the colors we can see within nature. Yetzirah is assigned to the emperor or prince scale, and it is represented by the swords, knights or princes, and the element of air. The prince scale is a mixture of the king and queen scales. This is the combination of the prismatic colors of light and the pigments of the physical world. This world can be seen as the astral world, as well as the world of emotion and connection. A saya is assigned to the Empress or Princess scale and represented by the pentacles, pages, or princess, and the element of earth. These colors reflect movement within the material world. There are some paths with mixed colors. They're either speckled or rayed to represent the movements we can find in nature. You will see that they waver and mingle as the colors of moving water shift and blend as you look at them, or as lights interplay with the movement of clouds. This suggests that this world is ever-changing. On the screen is a Kabbalah tree of life that I've designed with their corresponding tarot cards, including other correspondences such as their astrological association, element, archangel, crystal or mineral, and the name meaning. The arrangement of the tarot cards within the Tree of Life will vary depending on the system you are practicing. Not one singular system is right or wrong. In fact, according to Kabbalah, all systems are correct. Notice that I'm using the Queen scale. Generally, this is the tree you'd want to work with in your practice. Consider it to be the default tree. In this video, I will briefly go over the 10 Sephirot so that way you have a basic understanding of what they are and what they represent. At the top of the Tree of Life, we have the first vessel or sephira called Keter, known as the crown. Keter is the closest vessel to God and acts as an antenna to receive the divine spark from the Ein Sof. In Qabalah Tarot, Keter is represented by the 4 aces from the minor arcana. This is the place where the unmanifest is waiting to be manifested. The 4 aces are the tools of the magician. Only can manifestation come into existence through the Magi's will. Keter is the true self and a potential of God. Moving down to the second sephira on the right is Chokmah. Chokmah is the divine father, wisdom, and true will. Chokmah is primal masculine energy, the forces that initiate creation. This sephira is represented by the 2s in the minor arcana and the kings from the court cards. Chokmah is the manifesting and unfolding of God. To the left of Chokmah, we have the third sephira, Bina. Bina is the divine mother, understanding, and the soul consciousness known as Neshama, the intellectual self. Bina is primal feminine energy, the receptive forces that gives shape and form to all of creation. This sephira is represented by the 3s and the Queen cards. Bina is the moment of God, and this is essentially where the soul becomes alive. Next, we move diagonally down to the right where we reach our 4th sephira, Chesed. Chesed is mercy, love, and kindness. Chesed represents our memory. This sephira is represented by the 4s. This is the first sephira of action. It provides stability for God's emanation to come into being. It is known as both the speech and silence of God. Moving to the left of Chesed, we have our 5th sephira, Gevurah. Gevurah is strength, judgment, and power. This is the will of the human soul. Gevurah is where we find restriction, chaos, and elimination. It brings upon us difficulties and challenges. This sephira is represented by the 5s, and it is considered to be the yearning and wrath of God. Moving diagonally to the right in the middle of the tree, we have our 6th sephira, Teferet. Teferet is beauty and balance. This is where imagination comes into play. Although the goal when using the Tree of Life in our daily lives is to balance both sides of the tree, the 2 pillars of Boaz and Yakin, Teferet being the first sephira to emanate on the middle pillar of mildness, does this for us. And that's not including Keter, which I view as sitting above the pillars. This is also not including the hidden sephira, Da'at, which I'll talk about later. The role of Teferet is to convert and harmonize all energy from the source. This is the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world, or with the divine God. All energy must pass through this sephira. You can also view Teferet as a conductor. Teferet is represented by the 6s and the knights. The knights are also seen as the prince. This is the righteousness of God. Continuing on our diagonal course to the right, we reach our 7th sephira, Netzach. Netzach is victory and endurance, the infinity of creation, and provides fortitude and determination to succeed and overcome challenges. Netzach is represented by the 7s. This is where we find the grace and pleasure of God. To the left of Netzach, we have our 8th Sephira, Hod. Hod is splendor and brings reason into existence. It is a force that breaks down energy into separate and distinguishable forms. We can find diversity, structure, and expression of all kinds here in their many different forms. Hod is represented by the 8s. Hod is considered to be the healing of God. Once again, we find ourselves moving diagonally back to the middle of the tree toward 9th Sephira, Yesod. Yesod is the foundation that unites spiritual concepts into action. This is also represented by the sex organs, so this is where things get really juicy for us. Yesod can act as a mirror or reflection of energies and illuminates them into existence. This is where we have our soul consciousness of Nefesh, the sentience of both humans and animals. Yesod is represented by the 9s. This is where we'll find the might of God or the mighty one. Finally, as we move downwards to the very bottom of the tree, we reach our final and 10th Sephira, Malkut. Malkut is the kingdom or the physical world. Malkut is where all forms of God's emanations manifest and come into tangible and dense form. This is where Guf is found, which is the Hebrew word meaning body. According to Jewish mythology, in the Garden of Eden, there is a tree of life, or the tree of souls, that blossoms and produces new souls, which fall into the Guf, the treasury of souls. Gabriel reaches into the treasury and takes out the first soul that comes into his hand. Then Layla, the angel of conception, watches over the embryo until it is born. Malkut is represented by the 10s and the pages. The pages are also known as the princesses. This is the world of foundations. The Sephira Da'at can be considered an 11th Sephira, but there is no number assigned to this Sephira. It is also one that doesn't appear in early Kabbalistic texts. This vessel is hidden and sometimes not considered to be a part of the tree at all. On the Tree of Life, Da'at is a transparent or translucent Sephira. It also looks like the High Priestess card resides over this Sephira, but this card actually sits on the 13th path. Da'at is not represented by any tarot card, but you could use the High Priestess to represent this energy, as they are virtually one and the same. Da'at is knowledge, mind, and thought. If anything, I view Da'at as a Sephira reserved for the Divine God, and originally has no real applicable use for us. There is indeed zero physicality to this emanation. However, Da'at does represent our intuition and inner soul's guidance, so that doesn't make it any less important or meaningful, as our intuition is a highly evolved aspect of ourselves, which guides us in our daily life, especially if we are tuned into it. But again, I personally attribute this to God. So in a sense, this energy doesn't belong to us. In the video, the Sephira of Yesod, how sexual energy can elevate or destroy your consciousness, Rabbi Daniel Katz said, what Da'at is doing in consciousness, Yesod is doing in physical expression. Da'at is the spiritual version of the physical Yesod. Yesod and Da'at mirror the spiritual consciousness with the physical consciousness. Nobody knows exactly when or even how Kabbalah and Tarot came together, but there's a very undeniable link between these two systems. Some have argued that Kabbalah has always been a part of Tarot, but was largely kept secret from the public, and perhaps for good reason. Others theorize that Kabbalah is the sole reason why Tarot even exists. There's claims that some of the designs on the major Arcana cards from the 15th century closely mimic the Hebrew letters. We didn't really begin to see the connection between Kabbalah and the tarot cards until around the 19th century. This was a time when spiritual, occult, and esoteric beliefs were going through a revolution. Antoine Court de Gébelin made the connection of tarot and Kabbalah in his book The Primeval World, Analyzed and Compared to the Modern World, published in 1781. He stated that the 21 major Arcana cards plus the Fool card corresponds to each of the 22 Hebrew letters, along with their numerical values. Antoine claimed that the artwork and symbolism on the cards date back to the ancient Egyptians. His published works may have been the reason why there's even the theory that tarot cards originated from ancient Egypt in the first place. There are many who oppose his ideas and his claims, though, stating that he was completely inaccurate in his works and had no real occult knowledge. However, Antoine was involved with the Freemasons and a part of the occult community. So regardless if his claims were true or not, he initiated the art of interpreting the tarot cards as containing esoteric knowledge and insight, which may have inspired others of this time to share their insights into what the cards could mean as well. Alphonse Louis Constant, known as Eliphas Levi, made the connection of astrology, Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and other systems with the tarot cards, having published many works on occultism and esoteric knowledge. Levi is most certainly the father of modern-day tarot. Levi had major influences within the occult circles and on the development of the Golden Dawn. Levi was well respected for his knowledge and wisdom, and he contributed immensely to the development of occult and esotericism during a time when centuries of secret teachings were becoming more and more available to the public. Most of what today's tarot readers know about tarot and how they go about practicing tarot can be largely accredited to Levi. There is one theory of Kabbalah and tarot that I personally find fascinating, and that's the theory that Kabbalah was incorporated into the tarot cards as a way for Jews to practice Kabbalah without prosecution. I'm not exactly sure when this would have occurred, but as you could imagine, it had been many centuries ago, and likely during a time when tarot was used as playing card. Basically, the aspiring Kabbalists hid the symbols and meanings of their practice in the illustrations of the tarot cards as a way to preserve their knowledge. This theory goes along with the idea that the origins of tarot cards has always been linked to Jewish mysticism while disguised as something else entirely. It also sounds much like the Egyptian theory I've mentioned in the beginning of the video, where there's been a threat to the people and their culture, and as a way to preserve this knowledge and insight, they secretly hid them in the tarot cards. Regardless of how these two systems actually came together, it is very evident that tarot is heavily, if not completely, influenced by Kabbalah. In my humble opinion, tarot is the most perfect system of conveying the stories and meanings of the Tree of Life. I certainly don't view the correlation between the two systems as merely a coincidence either. It is my theory that these correlations and correspondences have always been there, whether or not these were the intentions of the first creators of the tarot. It's hard to imagine that they didn't channel into the archetypes, energies, and the concepts of Kabbalah and the Tree of Life upon creating the cards. They most certainly did not need to have knowledge of Kabbalah to intuitively tap into that knowledge anyways. As you might already be familiar with your own spiritual practices, the hidden knowledge and wisdom of the universe is ever present all around us, waiting for us to tune in and reveal these truths to our own consciousness. This is considered to be the path to higher consciousness or enlightenment, largely done through mystic acts such as meditation, astral projection, chanting or reciting scriptures, and lucid dreaming. I am in complete awe at how perfect these two very different but seemingly inseparable systems tie into each other. Kabbalah and tarot really do mirror one another, and it's interesting how tarot isn't accepted by Jewish faith, even though it's so heavily inspired by their knowledge. Learning Qabalah Tarot has certainly expanded and widened my own consciousness and understanding of the universe, and it has greatly improved my understanding of the tarot cards as a whole. Even though tarot is influenced by Kabbalah already, practicing actual Qabalah Tarot is its own breed. Majority of tarot readers aren't practicing Kabbalah. I would even counter that and say they aren't mindfully practicing Kabbalah. I say that because you don't need to know the meaning behind the symbols on the cards in order to tap into the energies behind those cards. Ultimately, it's not about the cards, because you are the fortune teller. You are divining into spirit and tapping into higher realms. The cards are merely a tool. You could honestly do the same thing with a set of blank cards, although you really need to use your imagination for that. The artwork on the cards and all the symbols and correspondences behind each card are the very things that ignite our imagination. The visual aspects of the cards are how you are able to even read the cards in the first place. The images allow us to go into the hidden parts of human consciousness and the hidden aspects of the spiritual realms. After all, our minds are easily programmable and influenced by imagery. So whatever needs to come out in a reading is going to come out, regardless of what the flower in the fool's hand actually means. Learning the Kabbalah side of tarot only connects you that much deeper with the cards. For the past 15 to 20 years, we've been seeing the reemergence of these once ancient and hidden practices. Today, tarot readings have become a trend. There are now thousands upon thousands of tarot readers all over social media. In my opinion, this has become a very oversaturated practice, but it is still one with great value and importance. The types of tarot readings you'll find among the social media tarot readers, whom I'll refer to as influencer readers, are of course tarot love readings. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently bad or wrong about love readings. I myself like a love reading every now and then, and there are many tarot readers who only perform love readings. But you could see for yourself that by posting one of these types of readings, it is perhaps one of the quickest ways to get the attention of other people. Some of the popular readings seem to be around the topics of healing and what others think about you. Because of this, plenty of influencer readers are taking advantage of this opportunity, thus capitalizing on it. Since this practice has become trendy, there are many influencer readers who are cut off from the deeper aspects of tarot. There's a huge disconnection and maybe even a misconception of tarot within the tarot community at large. This concern that I have could pose as a precaution for everyone. A precaution to not let any tarot reader take advantage of you, especially in times of need, and to understand that tarot, even though it is a tool, shouldn't be abused. While performing a tarot reading, you are dealing in your karma and the karma of others. You are connecting to spirit, for better or worse, and you are summoning energies from the hidden realms. It doesn't matter if someone knows everything there is to know about tarot or they picked up a deck for the very first time. You are making contact with the hidden worlds. Take the Ouija board, for example. If you have any experience with using one of those, then you'll know exactly what I mean. Then again, tarot could be a form of entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that either, which I know goes against everything I just said. But for the sake of what tarot truly is, at least from the perspective of Kabbalah, it is far beyond finding out who your soulmate is going to be. So what is practicing Qabalah Tarot really about then? Here's the thing, I can only tell you what Qabalah Tarot is from my own personal perspective. If you were to ask another practitioner, they may say something completely different than me. And that's totally fine, as long as we can all agree on this. Practicing Qabalah Tarot is having knowledge of Kabbalah, the tree of life, and incorporating all this knowledge and wisdom into your tarot card practice. That's essentially all that's required to practice Qabalah Tarot. It's certainly not about predicting the future or asking the cards to reveal if our crush is interested in us. Those sorts of things are trivial and not beneficial to our spiritual growth. Practicing Qabalah Tarot is much like practicing Kabbalah itself. With that said, there are many ways in which you could go about practicing. Practicing any form of Kabbalah is about your own personal spiritual growth and development. Religious practice and knowledge would only be required when you want to advance in your practice. Meditating with your cards is a key point to incorporating Kabbalah into your practice, which is a major part of Kabbalistic practice in general. Take the time to really dive into your own mind, so that way you can reveal what the cards mean to you. Writing down what you discover in your meditation will help you to remember. Writing down the insights of your meditations is also an act of bringing what you've gained in the higher mind realms to down here into the physical world where they can manifest. It's also important to note that the correspondences will differ depending on your sources and school of thought. There are many systems that incorporate Kabbalah into their tarot practice, and they will assign the cards to the tree in different ways. For example, in my practice, the kings reside in Hokmah, but I have seen a practice where the knights are assigned to Hokmah. Always choose the right practice for you. As for me, I don't follow any specific teachings. I go with whatever feels right to me at that moment, and this changes with time as I gather new information, which is another thing to consider. As you advance in your practice, your perceptions will inevitably change. Overall, it's important to have your own inner understanding of the cards outside of the information you can get from the external world. In Kabbalah, it is said that Adam's worst sin is not eating from the tree of life and only eating from the tree of knowledge, which is the tree that Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit from. By practicing Kabbalah and learning about the tree of life, it serves as a sort of redemption for man and mankind. Only you can seek the true knowledge and wisdom of this reality. Practicing Qabalah Tarot is one way of eating from the tree of life. How can you utilize this wealth of knowledge to your own benefit, to grow as a person, and to free your soul from the constraints and restrictions of this physical reality? My spiritual experiences first began when I was a baby. I was very aware of the world around me, and I remember several experiences where I was fully capable of forming sentences in my mind, but unable to actually say anything. I've had many experiences seeing angels and visions of what I perceive to be God's presence. Among other strange experiences that would happen, including some very dark and scary encounters, the hidden parts of reality have always been ever present to me throughout my entire life. I was raised on Christian beliefs, but my parents weren't strict about religion within the home, so I was free to explore and discover for myself. My dad even once told me that I can believe whatever I wanted to believe in as long as I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. During my teen years, I became a practicing Wiccan. Around the age of 14, my mom bought me my very first tarot deck for my birthday, the Cosmic Tarot. I performed very few tarot readings for others, so my experience mostly comes from using tarot for my own personal needs and within my craft. In my mid-20s, I decided to no longer practice tarot and basically ended my witchcraft and spiritual practices altogether. For several years, I sort of just jumped around from one belief to another, mostly between Christianity and basically just believing in a higher power, but not really caring too much or placing any significant importance on it. Around the year 2011, I began questioning my existence and the meaning of life. This was largely due to my research into conspiracy theories and just seeing the terrible things that go on behind the scenes. It made me feel like, okay, what's the point of it all then? If there's really so much evil being done, why are we here? And why are they getting away with it? This led me to discovering the Eastern practices of Hinduism and yoga, and eventually led me on a path I would refer to as my spiritual awakening. It was a highly personal, highly spiritual path of self-discovery. I experienced many activations, some of which would last for months and cause me all sorts of panic attacks. Nonetheless, I was waking up a part of myself and my soul that, much like most of everybody else, had laid dormant. So although I'm no stranger to the spiritual aspects of life, this was the first time I set out on a real spiritual path. There was a point in my journey where I went into deep solitude, having lucid dreams, inducing prophetic visions, and experiencing a sense of oneness with the universe. It was truly a very beautiful and lovely experience, despite the panic attacks, and it's one I probably could never replicate the same way again. One day, I remember asking the universe to send me a sign. I asked for a belief that wasn't a religion, but still had some sort of religious practice. Something that was highly spiritual, but was tangible and physical and real in the sense that I can see it. And most importantly, something that could explain the meaning of life to me. This led me to discovering astrology, and I first got into it through the Vedic system. Since I was already somewhat familiar with the Hindu faith and I was looking for something that was real and something that I could even see with my own eyes, I tapped into the Vedic astrology. It follows the sidereal system instead of the zodiacal tropical system, so it's based on the fixed location of the celestial bodies instead of the seasons. I remember watching a video from the KRS astrology channel here on YouTube about the Virgo rising sign, and I just started to cry. Like, never has there been anything in this world that made me feel so understood before. Not to this level of understanding anyways. It really gave me exactly what I was looking for in my search for meaning and purpose, as well as my own self-discovery. Because the system is so complex and the Vedic practice is very ritualistic and follows many rules, I didn't want to be disrespectful of it and decided to switch to tropical astrology. Also, a tropical astrology at this time, around the year 2016, was really getting its social media bearings. So there were all this new and fresh content being released, making it more easily accessible compared to the Vedic astrology content of that time. It was exciting to be a part of the earlier stages of it before social media influencers turned it into pop astrology. My strong psychic and intuitive abilities took a pause again later in 2016. I had once again cut myself off from my personal abilities. So much of the magic in my life completely dissipated. However, astrology was there to keep me grounded and to keep me into something that was self-fulfilling. Within the following year, I met a group of people through a channel here on YouTube. One of the members created a Twitter group chat and invited everyone to come join if they were interested. Since I didn't know anybody who was into astrology, I went ahead and joined the group. I met some amazing astrologers and tarot readers in this group chat who really expanded my knowledge. Through this group, a friend of mine gifted me a tarot deck. I told her I used to do tarot readings and I used to be really tuned into my psychic abilities, but haven't been connected with that part of myself anymore. One day, she sent me a tarot deck, the Easy Tarot. This had to have been around the year 2018, so about 6 years after I quit reading tarot cards. For a few years, I had to reteach myself everything since most of it was lost onto me. I started doing tarot readings for myself during the new moons and would incorporate a spread that I had created into my new moon manifestations. I began doing free tarot readings online and on social media before I started offering paid private tarot readings on my Etsy shop. I began studying Kabbalah and Qabalah Tarot about 2 years ago, so my knowledge of Kabbalah is very beginner, very amateur, although much of what I've been learning are concepts that I'm already familiar with. There's also a lot of my own intuition that has played an important role for me. So in a sense, I may have some advanced knowledge of Kabbalah, but it's fair and safe to say that I am a total beginner. The reason why I got into Kabbalah is because of tarot. I found out that tarot could be combined with Kabbalah, and for some reason that just fascinated me. I also remember seeing the Tree of Life in my tarot and witchcraft books when I was a teenager, so it had already been imprinted onto me from the distant past. In my spiritual searches, I want to get to the source. I want to go to the root of it all. And since tarot is so heavily influenced by Hermeticism and Kabbalah, that's where I naturally gravitated to. I seem to agree with many of the concepts and beliefs as well, even though I'm a total pagan at heart. It's truly a very fascinating practice. When I first tried to get into Kabbalah many years ago, it was very confusing and hard to understand. Back then, the concepts were not familiar to me. I remember watching videos and would have no idea what anyone was saying. A big barrier for me was the Hebrew language. Having never really heard it before and not knowing any Hebrew words at all, it was simply just hard to understand and to grasp what anyone was talking about. So it took coming back to it many years later for me to finally get it. And even when I got into it this time around, it was still hard to understand, but after a few months, I was able to really pick up on it. So if you're completely new to this and you have no clue about any of what I've been discussing, then all I could really say is to give it time, because eventually you'll be able to understand it too. Learning the Hebrew words and how the language operates is very crucial in my opinion. For the past 3 years, I've been going through what I would refer to as another spiritual awakening. And this time, it hasn't been pleasant at all. There's been a lot of what people call shadow work, a lot of ego deaths, a lot of suppressed memories coming back to the surface. And so I'm having to heal a lot of parts of myself that I suppressed in the past since childhood, since I was a baby, to recent events in the past few years that have made a traumatic impact on me. Since I'm currently going through this, whatever this is, this awakening, this initiation of sorts, perhaps I'll talk about it another time. So for now, I just wanted to briefly mention it. That basically concludes this video. I hope all the information in this video was informative and enlightening for you and has helped open up new avenues for you. And if you're completely new to tarot and especially to Kabbalah, I hope that this video inspires you to look into it more and incorporate it into your practice. Because I truly do believe that Kabbalah is probably the most perfect system you can apply to tarot cards. It just gives you more meaning and more connection to the cards. It helps you see things much deeper than what's on the surface. So I thank you for watching, especially if you got this far in the video, and I hope that you come back for the rest of the series when I do upload. I'm not exactly sure how often I will be uploading a video, so this series could take some time, maybe a year, maybe a couple years, or maybe a few months. It really depends on my schedule and when I'm able to come around to these videos and release them for you guys. If you would like to support me, you may do so by subscribing to my channel and by sharing my videos. You can take it a step further and support me through monetary means, either by buying one of my Qabalah Tarot study and meditation guides, a private tarot reading, a custom birth chart, jewelry, a painting, or anything else that's available on my Etsy shop. I also accept tips and donations through PayPal and Venmo. All the links can be found in the description below. Thank you for watching.